Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me on the webcast Career Planning Experiences of College Students with ASD. Today I'll be discussing a study that is currently underway at the VCU-RRTC. For today's presentation, I will be covering the results of specific questions or portions of the study. I will not be covering the study protocol or the Institutional Review Board IRB process that we underwent. If you are interested in learning more about our study protocol, please feel free to contact me and I will be happy to share this information with you. Just to give you a little bit of background about the study, we are funded through NIDER, and we are focused on identifying effective components of a collaborative career planning model. This has been a particular interest of ours for a number of years. We've done various studies and work, demonstration projects with college students with disabilities on this whole career planning process, since it is so critical when students are going through college to really look at that next transition, which is into their chosen career. So as part of our interest and work across the disability spectrum, if you will, we were given an opportunity to develop a study that really focuses on students on the autism spectrum, just to look at the particularly unique needs of this group. We are seeing more students with ASD entering post-secondary education, yet there is still very limited information or research in the literature about what their experiences are while in college. So we really wanted to focus on sort of that career planning process for students and realizing that there are organizations on campus and in the community that really can share their expertise and collaborate to really help this particular population as well as other college students with disabilities. And this includes vocational rehabilitation counselors, disability support services staff, and college career center counselors, each bringing their expertise about career planning and employment, and together really providing perhaps a more comprehensive collaborative model, and that is the goal of our study. Today, we really will be focusing on the experiences of 18 college students with autism. We are in the process of completing the interviews. We have 18, our goal is 20, and we now are in the midst of conducting structured interviews with vocational rehabilitative counselors, DSS office staff, and career centers. So in order to look at what is happening in the area of career planning for students with ASD, we used a structured interview process to gather this information and really looking at where they are currently in their planning and preparation activities, what are they using on campus in terms of services and supports, and how is their satisfaction with these services as well as sort of their overall experience on the post-secondary campus. We know that for individuals with autism that there has been research showing that really employment defines them as to who they are, that this is very critical for them and is often more important than a social network. And as we know, students with autism do have difficulties in the area of social networking and developing those relationships. So it's really important for this group of students to have a career growth that has well-developed technical skills and successful employment experiences, because it is such a significant part of who they see themselves. We're going to be going through a series of tables and graphs just to give you an idea of who the participants are and to give an idea of some of their particular needs. We will move through this, and then at the end of the presentation we'll cover what some of the emerging trends are across the 18 students that we've interviewed, and looking then forward to what recommendations we are looking to develop, and how that ties in then to the second part of the study, if you will, with the various service providers in the area of career planning and employment. As you can see, we had a predominance of males that participated in the interview process, and a majority were from four-year institutions, and these individuals were attending college in Virginia. Our focus was on the state of Virginia and the experience of students in our 2- and 4-year private and public colleges and universities. Just to touch for a moment on how we located our participants, we did use a purposeful sampling process. We provided information to, in particular, disability support service offices across the state with information about the study, and asked if they would send that out to individuals who have registered at their office. Once the information was sent out, students then had contact information and could volunteer to participate, and only at that time would we know who they were because they had contacted us. Once they had contacted us, we sent information about the study and the purpose, and we provided a consent form, and once the individual signed the consent form that they were willing to participate, then interviews were scheduled. The interviews were done face-to-face, which meant that interviewers traveled to different parts of the state to ensure that there could be that kind of connection and discussion with the individuals, and hopefully to ease any concerns and to make them feel comfortable about the information we were seeking. A two-part instrument was developed for these interviews. The first part, and we will be going through many of these slides on demographic background information, so that we could gather that on the participants, along with some short answers and menu-driven questions that really focused on the supports and services that they were either receiving or not receiving through on campus or in the community. One thing that we really focus on is looking at what's happening on campus and in the community, and we have found over the years that it's really important to see what connections are happening in the community, because that is where, as we call, the second big transition occurs as students exit college and go into the community, and how connected they are in the community and already seeking resources that will help them facilitate that transition as well as while living in the community. Students were we sent the interview questions and everything to them so that they could become very familiar with what we were asking, and they were able to, if they chose, to complete this demographic and short answer prior to the actual interview. It could be done by the individual independently, or if they chose to with the interviewer if they had particular questions as they completed that section. That followed with 7 open-ended questions that we asked to get more in-depth information concerning their career planning process, their perspectives on important academic, career, and college experiences, so we could begin to get a feel for individually as well as across the participants what their experiences were about on the post-secondary level. We did a lot of work looking at the types of questions and trying to be sensitive to this particular population and their interaction, social skills. And one limitation of the study could be that we did ask open-ended questions, but we really tried to look at research methods that would help us overcome that. Looking at the participants' academic status, we really were looking pretty well split among the freshmen, well, they are split among freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. We did have one grad student and a student that had just recently, a couple of students that had just recently graduated from college. You can see that their GPA range is 2.2 to 3.7, and that there are a range of career majors that students were involved in. The students did, about half the students did express that they looked at particular career majors based on their areas of strong interests or strengths, and that is seen as a positive of students with autism because they can have very focused interest areas, and they can build on that interest and seek careers that really provide opportunities for them to show their strengths. One student talked about her ability in math and how she enjoyed math, and a high school teacher had said, you know, you might want to look at being going into a major or career as an accountant. And she really felt that that helped to validate her potential and looked into that as a particular career option. Other students expressed having positive experiences acting or directing, even writing scripts for their high school drama clubs, and felt that these experiences really led into majors of English or filmmaking. The issue with this whole career planning process for these individuals, while it is truly a good thing that they're looking at what their interests and strengths are in the process of looking at careers and majors, their actual exposure or experience in terms of how that plays out in an actual career is very limited, and it was very limited across the 18 participants that we interviewed. They really lacked any type of work experience or even volunteer or exposure to careers so they would really have sort of that day-to-day knowledge, if you will. Some had no work experience at all, and others had very entry-level jobs. We asked one particular participant about, she was entering grad school. She had completed her undergraduate work, and this individual had never worked. So it was clearly focused the whole time on academic studies. And when we ask about her career choice and now going into graduate school, we talked about what that might look like to her. And I know that, and we knew that for students with autism that oftentimes, you know, putting themselves into another situation that they've had no experience is very difficult for them. But we were asking questions around, had they talked with an advisor, had they, you know, met with anyone who could just sort of give a picture of that, and she had said no, and that her major point was that she would have a better idea about all of this once she got into grad school. So taking classes to this individual was a way of understanding what needed to happen in employment. And clearly we know that how those academics transfer into employment can be very different as you look at the day-to-day experiences. We again, are focusing on the career planning process, so we wanted to know what their experiences were with their campus career center. And clearly, these participants have not used their career center on the campuses where they're attending. Those that did, usually and across the board, it was more of a one-time experience, maybe going to a class on interviewing skills or on resume writing. A few did meet with a career counselor, but what sort of came out of what services they used at the Career Center was very short term. Although they expressed great satisfaction with the services that they had received at the Career Center, again, it was more of a one-time or two-time experience. One student who was majoring in film stated that he really didn't understand why he should go to the Career Center because he knew what he wanted to be. Another student spoke about wishing about opportunities to meet with potential employers about their career interests, and was not familiar with the fact that career centers have career fairs and informational interviewing opportunities. So many of the services or supports that they express needing can be provided through various mechanisms at career centers, through disability support services offices, as well as vocational rehabilitation. But that awareness of what those services involved is clearly needed. As you can see, family members are critical and play a major role in their source of information concerning careers. The individuals did, the participants did have involvement with career counselors at the post-secondary level. Again, that was more of a one or two time experience, but there were some that clearly accessed those services. Their teachers in high school, the faculty. So they are getting sources, guidance counselor in high school, disability support services. They are getting information, but it is a matter of really developing and helping and assisting students to put that information together and help them as they move through their career planning. When we were talking about the influence of family members, one student indicated that his parent had discouraged him from pursuing a risky career in acting, and was strongly encouraging him to become a teacher. Parents really did, they were highly involved with their children in terms of researching various careers to guide them, and some had arranged summer work experiences so that they would get a feel for that. So the family unit really worked for several of the students to really try to engage more in the process of learning about careers and what was involved in those careers on a day-to-day basis. What were the expectations and what was required in the work environment. When asked about their level of preparation to enter the workforce in their career area, remember we had freshmen and sophomores, we did have juniors, so it's not surprising that some felt unprepared with lots of questions about what was involved. We did have, though, almost an equal number said that they felt that they were becoming prepared. They still had questions about the work environments, and a couple felt that they were unprepared. We only had one individual that really felt that they were prepared at that point to enter the employment arena. When we ask further about the questions that they had or where they felt unprepared, a number of them said that it would really help them if they had work experiences or internships. They really felt they needed help with interview skills, those job search strategies, how do you go about securing employment, resume development, and information on the Americans with Disabilities Act. this is laid out in this particular table in terms of how, what types of activities they need that would help them gain this type of information that they were looking at. They really were interested in job shadowing and business mentors. They were really looking for ways to seek advice and information from individuals that were currently in their career interest area. So there was a great need for informational interviews, for that career exploration, and they really wanted that to be experiential through internships or work experience. Again, job shadowing and mentors. One area that I think is of particular note, that is something that I think as a field we really need to focus more on, is a disclosure plan for the employer. Students felt that there was a real need for that when we were talking with the students about their work experiences. One student had a physical disability as well as autism, and he disclosed his physical disability but not his autism. He was the only one that out of those that had any work experience that actually disclosed. The remainder did not disclose a disability. So we really, I think this is an area that is very important that students need to really look at in terms of being able then to be in the work environment and successful based on receiving accommodations. When we are looking at other areas, other campus services that students accessed, we ask about registering with the Disability Support Service Office, and clearly all of them have done that. Majority are using their accommodations provided. And what's important about this is that although this is a small sample and certainly more research of this type is needed for us to be able to generalize, but if you look at the national trend, very few or a very small number actually come on campus and disclose their disability and get accommodations. So this group clearly sees the need for that and is accessing the Disability Support Service network. When we look at and ask them about the most frequent accommodations used, you can see that extended time and the alternative testing room were primarily the ones that were seen as most helpful. What we see are sort of the typical accommodations that are provided by the DSS office, and just to let you know some of the things that we're hearing in this process of our structured interviews from DSS offices as well as career centers and voc rehab counselors is more strategies to deal sort of with that emotional or social networking side issues that students with autism have difficulties with, especially trying to live independently and be independent on college campuses. So as you can see, they are using some of the standard accommodations that are provided, and with the top two, students expressed that these were very helpful in their academic success. When we ask about other campus services they were using, students are, for the most part, seeking academic advisement. As you can see, very few, if any, are going to the counseling center if there were particular issues that they were experiencing. Some were involved with some mentoring, so at some of the colleges there were programs or support groups or things that provided that type of experience for students, but not across the board in terms of that being available on all campuses. And they were utilizing tutoring and the writing center, and so they were going out into onto the campus and accessing services that are available to all college students, and working in the areas of making sure that academically they were prepared. When we looked at sort of those academic services needed and what they expressed to really more fully assist them on campus, we're looking at areas of managing their stress, their time, organizational skills, and this is not unusual for college students with disabilities or college students in general in terms of their need for these particular types of supports. In terms of living arrangements, when we ask about that, it was split between being at home and living on campus, and 2 were living off of campus but not at their home. We see more and more students in general, college students, because of cost and all of that, who do decide to live at home. However, we do want to potentially explore this further, which we didn't in this particular study, because there is some research that indicates that sometimes the decision to live at home is based on the fact that they are most comfortable there, that they know their family understands them and how they are, their behaviors or particular quirks. So they choose to live at home based on that. We did not go into any great depth as to why home was, living at home was selected as opposed to being on campus or off campus. But there still is that need for those independent living skills and issues and being more independent, obviously. One student that we interviewed said that he was so focused on the end of the semester, finals, and preparing papers and just very, very focused on getting through the semester that he literally forgot to eat. He would eat minimally, and he lost 50 pounds. So when his parents saw him at the end of the semester, they were highly concerned about the dramatic physical change in their son. So we know that there still are some of those independent living issues and skills that are needed for students. When we ask about some of the non-academic information needed, clearly they talked about solving problems, learning more about their disability and how that impacts their learning and socializing and living in the community. Making decisions and setting goals. Setting goals is really something that we have focused on in our research over the years, because we find that students with disabilities and students in general, but in our work specifically with students with disabilities, setting goals seem to be very much a needed skill. So we were not surprised to see that come up on our list of non-academic information that's needed. What was expressed by the students was a need to have mentors or someone that they felt they could go to seek advice or information. And I think that speaks to, in some ways, not having that social network that is so important to be able to talk with friends about particular issues, or to go to someone that represents or is a mentor, or someone that they would seek advice who may have more life experiences than they've had. When we asked them about how they wanted to get information about solving problems or learning about their disability, those type of things that they felt they needed, most said that they wanted to do it on a one-on-one or a small group, which is interesting because although these students are very computer savvy by blogging or surfing or talking with friends and family, obtaining information through a website or learning over a website, they felt was not their first preference. Now I know that there is sort of a growing research about learning and perhaps learning and taking coursework via the web that could be very successful for students with autism. So we really need to be looking more and more into that in terms of how information is provided, especially in the areas that they feel that may be very conducive for academic needs, but they're non-academic, that supports that of solving problems and that type of thing may need to be presented through other mechanisms. So we've gone through a number of slides on information, giving you an idea of the participants and some of their responses and some of their needs that they've expressed. So what does this mean in terms of some of their emerging themes? And today, really, you've just seen a very small snapshot of some of the information that we've collected so far. And we hope to then really provide further, more in-depth information through written materials or other types of presentations. But let's look at what some of the emerging themes, again, choosing a major, as you recall, family did play a critical role in what direction or major that the students were able to, were seeking and guidance on career choices. And again, there was sort of that encouraging that they were looking at a selection of careers of their interests and in areas they excelled in, but yet those choices were really made on very limited exposure to actual work environments that could be obtained through work experience or volunteer experiences. Limited use of the college career centers. Again, the students that we interviewed really lacked an awareness of what career centers could offer. So that limited in a sense of them not having enough information to really make informed decisions. And the career center, going to a career center does mean that it does require an initiation on the part of the individual to go to schedule an appointment or to go and look through materials. And we see a similar theme as what we had seen in some of our other work with students with disabilities, that sometimes going into a career center and not really sure about what to do, and it feels very overwhelming to an individual. One of the participants said that she did go into a career center, but everybody seemed so busy and she wasn't quite sure what to ask. So we have been trying to do work on making even the physical layout, discussing with career centers to make it more welcoming for students with disabilities, and know that that career centers are working very hard to do this, but that this still can remain an issue for some of the students that we've been interviewing. And their limited use, they were very satisfied with the services, but they were sort of a one-time kind of experience, that there wasn't a continuing building relationship with the center to get information. The accommodation use, again, all of the students had disclosed they were using a majority were using their accommodations, and which was very encouraging, that there was a connection with this office, and that extended time on tests and alternate testing really did seem to be the effective, what they found most effective in helping them. We did talk with students about their overall experience on the college campus and what they would really like individuals, especially the post-secondary education staff, faculty and staff, to know. And they really would like that individuals perceive ASD in a more positive light, that they don't need a cure, but that that their interests their strengths, really can help them build a life around some of the areas of interest and can move them into careers that could be very satisfying. And to recognize that they still really have a great deal of difficulty in social situations, and that they're not being rude or some of their behavior can be misinterpreted, but there needs to be sort of a broader culture of understanding about students with autism. They talked about the need to have things explained in more detail, of course. And this is not always possible, but when things are happening, to get as much advance notice as possible so that they can adjust to any changes in their schedule or things that are happening. And for some, they said even the environment where they are in terms of learning or where they're studying or that kind of thing, that something like flickering lights can be very, very difficult for some of them and can really impede their learning and comprehending information. Those personal management skills, solving problems, such as who to go to with questions or figuring out the college process itself, which some were on larger campuses, and it still can be just as confusing on smaller campuses. It is a new system, and we need to recognize that, and that the system, the college process really needs to be explained and learned. Solving problems is a challenge, and such as where to go to get their questions answered, or sort of figuring out that college process. That is, since it is a new environment, a whole new system, that can be very overwhelming for students, and where to go for financial aid or getting their disability documentation. All of those things they find can create a sense of being overwhelmed or anxiety-inducing. Again, the parents playing a significant role in connecting students with services and advocating on their behalf. Students talked about that, how their parents really have been their advocates and playing that role in connecting them. They really are seeking better skills for meeting deadlines and managing their stress. Again, this is something that we have seen across the board, if you will, for college students with disabilities, and really goal setting. That meeting deadlines really is all about goal setting and some of the other skills that are needed, or time management, organizational skills. Peer relationships are just so critical, as we know, in life, and know that this can be an area of great distress and anxiety for students with autism. Some of their free time activities, again, were more individually based, not necessarily involving a larger group of individuals that they could connect with. Some of the experiences that they've tried going on, being involved in activities on campus can be at times disappointing and a struggle to fit in. When asked a little bit more about this, one participant replied when talking about friends or connections on campus, he said, "I have none." Others, really talked about issues of fitting in, not understanding jokes. If they're in an area with a great deal of noise, it's difficult for them to feel comfortable in those type of situations. So, and others saying that really feeling so overwhelmed with their coursework and things that they needed to be doing otherwise, it was putting sort of that social part on hold, that their primary focus was really trying to get through the academic side. So, but we did have students that range from spending probably too much time with friends, really trying to work so hard to fit in that that their academics may be impacted, but others feeling extremely, and for the most part, a majority of the participants that we spoke with and interviewed really felt extremely isolated on the community, on the campus. Some are trying to learn their social skills through counseling, but for the most part, the individuals that we interviewed were acutely aware of the social difficulties they were facing and really looking for ways that they could move forward and try to connect with individuals, their peers on campus. Again, improving their college experiences. They talked about having access to relevant work experience and internship opportunities to really better understand their areas of interest and majors and employment, being more prepared in those critical areas of note-taking and organizational skills. Some even talked about money management, definitely those independent living skills. It's interesting that they wanted more course selections, which probably focused on their high interest areas and wanting more coursework in those areas and less group work. Group work can be an extremely difficult situation for students. In fact, when we interviewed one student and there were class projects and the group would first meet, this individual would say would apologize to the group that they had him in their group, that he felt that he wasn't going to be able to contribute much, or just wanted them to know that he felt badly about that, and that was that really illustrated the level of uncomfortableness and difficulty that some students have. But they wanted to learn information through small group or one-to-one interaction, but not through the web. So getting a better understanding of how, of course, getting information through small groups can be more of a passive activity than something where you're actually doing group work and you're a participant. But we really do want to explore more about those strategies or methods for engaging these students in terms of information obtaining about careers or college or the whole social networking and all aspects, if you will, and connecting with the community. So we look at some very, very preliminary recommendations at this point that we will, and these are just a few that we're looking at, and then we will take what we have learned from these students, take the information and use that as we are completing our interviews with the DSS staff, Career Center staff, and Voc Rehab counselors, and how we can better convey information to these service providers about collaborating, areas around collaboration, and helping students with ASD on college campuses. Already, we're seeing some emerging trends from the interviews that we are conducting with these service providers that they would like opportunities to discuss effective strategies, working with these students to have some face-to-face networking time to really learn about each other and where they can provide resources and support to each other. And just other ways that they could work together to collaborate. So we are seeing that, we are starting to make some connections between what the students are telling us and what we're learning from the service providers through the interviews that we are doing. So we are looking at ways that to support students with ASD and in their understanding of their disability and how that impacts their learning, and also the greater arena of majors, employment, social networking, and that type of thing, and the expectations of college, really helping students to understand what those expectations are, to really look at opportunities for more on-site work experiences or internships, or mentoring, ways that they can really engage in more and more in terms of where they're headed career-wise. And again, we're already seeing through some of the information that we're obtaining from service providers is they really would like to see training on effective communication and instructional strategies. Students are saying that, as well as the service providers. So how are we going to work to really share that information, to really develop ways that we can assist in more effective communication and instructional strategies? And to collaborate among service providers to explore expanded supports as that one-to-one coaching, to learn the college processes and to understand the needs of these individuals as they transition into employment and into the workplace for success. So we're looking at this blending of these recommendations based on what the students are telling us, as well as what we're learning from the service providers. So I do appreciate your time today. I hope you have found this information interesting and helpful. We will be developing more as we go along and finalize particular aspects of the study, and as we move into developing these particular modules for information for service providers on campus and in the community who really have those expertise on work experience, careers, developing that path for success for students with autism. So I thank you very much, and I hope you have a good day.